Hi, I'm Dr. Peter. Nice to see you guys, and welcome to Before and Beyond, where we talk about some cases and our treatment planning and our thoughts about what we're thinking when we see the work. So I've got a case today. It's a relatively simple, but also there's some nuances to the case. So you can see I've got a patient here, and at the front, he's got a tooth that's quite worn down. So this tooth here. Now, when I look at this case, I think, okay, he's got an existing filling on the tooth. It's quite worn down. The line between the filling and the tooth is very noticeable, and aesthetically, it's not the nicest looking, especially when we compare to his adjacent tooth. There's that difference in height. And so when you see that, it's that asymmetry can make things look really uneven. So essentially what we want to do with this kind of case is we want to think, okay, what are we going to do to try to get the best aesthetics? So first off, we want to think, okay, we need to remove this old filling. And after we remove this old filling, we want to build the edge of this tooth. We want to almost get it to, let's try to get it a little bit nicer, that same kind of level as the adjacent tooth. That's one thing. And the nuances to this case is that on the edges of these teeth, you want to create a little bit of anatomy in the tooth to create a very natural look. So first off, with this kind of case, what I'm thinking is, okay, we want to get the color right. So when I'm looking at this case, I'm thinking, okay, let's get the color of the tooth really accurately. And then we want to think about how we're going to build the edge of the tooth nicely. So in a case like this, first things first, when the patient sits in the chair, we'll get the color. Get the color matching as best as we can. And then after we've got the color, then we want to think of, at the edge of the tooth here, we have two structures. We have the enamel, which tends to be the whiter, translucent part of your tooth. And then we have the dentin, which is the inner surface. And we want to get a nice balance between the two because it will create nice shadows. So when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, okay, the dentin is going to kind of come around there, and that's going to create a little bit of warmth and naturalness in the center of the tooth. And then I'm going to layer the enamel color over. And with this here, one of the reasons why his filling doesn't look the nicest is because you can see that very noticeable line around there. And that's something that we can do a few things to try to improve. And essentially what you want to do is do what we call a bevel. And you want to do a bevel, a nice little bevel. And you want to create a little uneven bevel around there, because then I can really blend that composite there. And by doing that, you can get a really nice, natural, smooth transition towards the tooth. And it'll look really, really natural. And then once we've got that blend really nice, then we're essentially just finishing things up, polishing it really smoothly, getting it really matching the aesthetic to the adjacent tooth. Another thing we notice here is that his tooth here is a little bit worn down. He's got a little bit of chips and things like that. So that's something that I want to think about when I'm doing my final filling. I don't want it to be perfectly flat. I want to create these little kind of dips and divots on the edge of the tooth, because that will create the symmetry between those two teeth. And that's the kind of things I'm thinking of when I'm thinking of a case like this. Little things, but all those little things will add up to creating a really, really natural tooth that will perfectly mirror the adjacent tooth. So yeah, that's one of these cases and the thoughts I'm going through when I'm treating this kind of case. Yeah, and that's our case. So thanks for listening for today, and hope you guys learned a little bit about what we're thinking when we see cases like this.